My name is Magda. I'm a videographer, I work at America's Test Kitchen, and I have an insatiable sweet tooth. And while I'm not a pro, I've learned a few things about baking and dessert making since I started working here. Show-stopping confections may look intimidating, but if I can do it, anyone can. So let's do this together and make some dessert. You can say you don't like white chocolate, but deep down, I know you do. Blah blah, it's not really chocolate or it's too sweet, but the truth is, it's completely versatile, and when caramelized, it's next level delicious. That's why I love this caramelized white chocolate mousse. Light and fluffy with butterscotch notes, 5 ingredients from start to finish, and dead easy to make. It's the dessert I can't stop eating, and neither can anyone else for that matter. It's just that good. So here we go. I'm starting with 3 bars of white chocolate here. I need about 8 ounces total, and since each of these bars is about 3.5 ounces, I'm going to use my scale to measure the exact amount before I get to chopping. Close enough for me. Now I'm going to give the bars a quick chop on my cutting board. I found that white chocolate tends to be a little less brittle than bittersweet, so I'm less worried about shards of chocolate jumping all over and off my board. Last few pieces. This has like an almost buttery consistency. Once that's done, I need to transfer the chocolate to a 10-inch oven-safe skillet. I like using one that's lighter in color. It's just easier for me to tell when the chocolate is that perfect shade of brown rather than burnt. Nice rough chop over here, using my knife as a bench scraper of sorts. It's best to use the dull end of the knife. And this is the cool part of this recipe. I'm actually going to oven roast the white chocolate in 3 to 4 10-minute stages. My oven is set to 300 degrees, the oven rack is in the middle position, so into the oven for 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, my skillet is pretty screaming hot, so I'm going to set it on a heat-safe surface, making sure to grip the handle with a kitchen towel or oven mitt. Last thing I need here is a burnt hand. And using my spatula, I'm going to smooth the chocolate into an even layer across the bottom of the skillet. I have to warn you, this is the last time this chocolate is going to look appealing for a while. It all comes together in the end, but let's just say this recipe definitely has its awkward phase. Back in the oven for its second bake, another 10 minutes here. Alright, 2 melts down. There hasn't been much of a change in the color, but I can tell that the chocolate is much drier, and it's really resisting my spatula a bit. The texture is also pretty lumpy, but I'm going to do my best to spread it back into an even layer. This is going to help the sugars and the milk solids brown and eventually turn the color of peanut butter. And now back into the oven for another 10 minutes. For reference, the oven part of this recipe is going to take about 45 minutes total. Okay, now I can see a change in the color, and I can tell that the chocolate is starting to take on a grainy look. It's more of a light caramel color at this point. Not quite as dark as I want it, for sure. And the more I use my spatula to scrape along the bottom of the skillet, it starts to kind of take on even more color. It's also smelling pretty good. The residual heat is continuing to brown the chocolate as I stir and spread. I still want this to go a little bit darker, so I'm going to give it one last bake in the oven, and it goes for another 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I can start prepping the rest of my ingredients. And by rest, I mean the other 4. I've got 2 whole eggs here, and I want to point out that this is a raw egg chocolate mousse. Of course, you can make mousse with cooked eggs or just with cream and maybe some gelatin, but it just doesn't have the same moussey texture you'd only get from foamy egg whites, and I use pasteurized eggs here, and this is more of a once-in-a-while treat, not an everyday dessert. Yolks in one bowl, whites in another, using my clean hands to separate the eggs so that I don't get any yolks mixed in with my egg whites. And now it's time to introduce my stovetops for the last phase of caramelization. This is what my chocolate looks like after its last 10 minutes in the oven. It's crumbly, it's definitely peanut butter colored, and it is very dry. I wouldn't even call this sand texture. It's just like clay almost. Alright, I'm not going to bother spreading this into an even layer again. I'm going to set my stovetop to medium-low, and I want this crumbly chocolate to return to its smooth, original consistency. In order to do that, I need to replace some of the water I lost in the oven. 5 tablespoons of water to be exact. I'm doing this one at a time to minimize any bubbling and splattering of the hot chocolate. And now I can use my spatula to reincorporate the water into the chocolate. Eventually the mixture is going to come together and take on a dark caramel color, just like that. I'm not really worried about any of those lumps in the mixture because my next step is to strain the chocolate. Using a fine mesh strainer and a heat-safe bowl, I'm just going to let the strainer capture any milk solids that didn't dissolve. Get my skillet out of the way. And now pressing hard on the strainer with my spatula, just trying to squeeze out every last bit of chocolate. And now my chocolate needs to cool for about 10 minutes. I really want it to come to just above room temperature. Add a pinch of salt, and now my 2 egg yolks. Thorough whisk around the bowl, making sure that no yellow streaks remain and the mixture is completely uniform. I have to say this stuff is looking and smelling almost exactly like caramel, which is pretty much what I'm going for, and this is exactly where I want to be in this part of the recipe. Alright, stand mixer, check. Mixer bowl, check. And whisk attachment, check, check. Into the bowl go my 2 egg whites. I'm going to set my speed to medium-low at first, just till I see that the whites are getting foamy. Once I see foam, I'm going to turn the speed to medium-high. It should look something like this. Got good fluffy peaks. It's not too stiff. It's exactly what I'm looking for. So you probably guessed I'm going to fold my egg whites into the chocolate mixture, but I'm going to give it a little bit of a head start first. So about 1/4 of my egg white mixture goes into the chocolate, and I'm going to whisk to kind of aerate the mixture. I know it looks like I'm actually deflating the egg whites here, but this step is going to make it much, much easier when I get to folding. Alright, this is already looking nice and airy. It's much fluffier than it was when I started. So now I'm going to go ahead and incorporate the rest of my egg whites. And this is where I can start using my spatula to fold. Just scooping from the bottom of the bowl, rolling over the foam. And because I took that extra step to whisk in some of the egg whites at the beginning, the remaining foam will incorporate pretty easily, and I'm actually much less likely to deflate the mousse than if I tried folding it in all at once. Working in a figure 8 pattern here, scraping along the sides and bottom of the bowl, and then dragging my spatula through the center. But I'm also being extra careful not to overmix the whites and the chocolate. Overmixing could really affect the texture of the final dessert, and not in a good way. So now I can get working on the final ingredient, whipped cream. I'm not even going to clean the mixer bowl. I'm just going to add 1 cup of chilled heavy cream. Speed goes to medium-low at first, and then high until I see, you guessed it, more soft peaks. You've also probably noticed that I haven't used any added sugar in this recipe. All the sugar I need comes directly from the white chocolate itself. And since the mixture is already pretty light, I don't need to do any more whisking. I can move just straight to folding. And once again, dragging along the sides and the bottom of the bowl, using that figure 8 pattern. Again, making sure to get rid of all of those white streaks without overmixing. And eventually it should look like this. It's definitely doubled in size, and the color is much more beige, more butterscotch looking than it was when I first started. I'm going to go ahead and bring out 6 ramekins. This recipe makes about 6 servings, 5 I guess if you don't count the one that I'm going to eat directly after making these. I like to use a ladle for this. It's much more accurate, a lot less messy than pouring straight from the bowl. I'm going to start with 1 ladle at a time for each ramekin. I can always go back later and top off the ramekins if I need to. Alright, second one done. Taking my time through this step. Trying to be as neat as possible. Last one done. Alright, I think I stayed pretty neat through all of this, but I do see a few drops along the sides of some of these ramekins. I'm gonna give this a quick wipe. Personally, I think these desserts are so beautiful, but especially so when they're neat and tidy. Alright, each gets a little shake to let the mousse settle. Now the mousse needs to sit in the refrigerator for about 2 hours. And before I do that, I'm going to cover each one with a sheet of plastic wrap. Yes, this is a bit of a pain, but I really don't want the mousse to form a skin on top. So this is an important extra step. Okay, onto a rim baking sheet and into the fridge, again for 2 hours, or up to 24 if I need. Either way, these need to set up completely in order to achieve that light, moussey texture. Okay, you guessed it, a little more than 2 hours later, I've got a bowl of beautiful blueberries and blackberries, and I've got my set up mousse. Any berry would probably do here, but blueberries and blackberries look so nice contrasted against the butterscotch color of the mousse, and they kind of go with my ramekins if I'm being honest. I love doing this in a separate bowl. That way I kind of get an even amount of berries in each handful. Bonus, if I don't use them all, I can stick the bowl in the fridge and save the berries for a snack later. And now I can get decorative. A few blackberries, a few blueberries in each one. It's kind of cool to leave a bit of the chocolate mousse exposed so you can see that nice rich color and you know that it's caramelized. And now these are ready to serve. A little bite just for me, just for quality control, of course. And of course, the obligatory photo for the gram. And I know I say this all the time, but this really is my favorite dessert of all time. It's just light and buttery all at once, not at all overly sweet, and absolutely stunning to look at. I know this was a weird one to get through, but I really hope you make this for yourself. And of course, comment below to let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. See you next time.